Hello and welcome to the year that we started the podcast, a podcast born from the ever piling rubble that is 2020. I am your co-host, Jeff.
And I'm your other co-host, Nick.
And this is our podcast. We're a couple of friends, a half a continent apart, that have come together and talking about the things that are fun and interesting to us. Nick.
Yes.
Different than our last couple episodes. This time, instead of a question, I have a dumb story, because I know for a fact that we're going to get into some nerdy stuff. So I don't want you to feel like you're, out on that all by your own.
I appreciate that.
I want you to be comfortable. we haven't talked about this literally at all. When I was, I don't even want to guess super accurately, but let's say I was in the preteen, preteen. Let's go preteen. I was, 11, 12. And it was when Yu-Gi-Oh! Was super, super popular with our group of friends. It was, all the rage, trading cards, etc. I was a competitive kid, and that's turned into a competitive... turned into a competitive adult. Surprise, surprise. But no, one of the things that had came out was the Labyrinth episode. I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 episodes. And me and my brother, mostly me, with my brother as a poor kid to help do the manual labor with me. So if you're not familiar with what happened during this...
I'm familiar. I'm far too familiar.
Okay. Have I told you the story before?
You hit the right demographic, but no, you haven't. No.
Oh, okay, this is great. Oh my gosh.
It's probably worth saying the background for anybody who's listening who isn't, as deep in this rabbit hole as we are.
Yeah, so, okay. We... okay. I'm having a hard time.
The Labyrinth episode, yep.
This is so embarrassing to say. I don't think I've ever said it.
At least this is your childhood. I'm going to tell you about nerdy stuff that's going on in my life on my day-to-day, so you're good.
Yeah, so about the time that those episodes came out, me and my brother, we were pretty close with a few friends from, just had the mutual interest of dueling. Oh my gosh, this is terrible.
Of course.
Anyways, so Labyrinth episode, it was really cool. It's a different take on what was going on at the time, and so I wanted to recreate that in our own group of friends. We took, I think the size of the poster board was maybe, 3 foot by 2 foot, and we took maybe 6 of those. Like the whole size of it was probably 6 by 8 or something to that effect, 6 by 8 foot. And so we had all of that real estate to work with, and then took cardboard and cut out pieces for walls. And I measured out, like with a ruler, the lines of where each space was. So I measured out every single space, like as if it was a chessboard that was 6 foot by 8 foot or whatever. And then made a maze with like little portal things where you could port to different parts of the maze, just like it was on the show.
Oh my god.
And then we would take it apart and then take it to our friend's house and play, or they would come over to our house and play. And like, I used hot glue, and part of it got glued to the carpet, and
most people bring over like a football or basketball or whatever their friend's house. You come over with a big cardboard labyrinth.
I came over with my life work.
Yes, of course.
But no, like, it was so much work, but it was so much fun, and I enjoyed it so much, and it was the nerdiest thing that I had done up until I started DMing a campaign a while back in the pre-COVID days. But so, Nick, I need to know. Well, okay. First off, do you have any closing comments on how nerdy that is?
So one, I'm right there with you. Yu-Gi-Oh was like big in that part of my life too. We're the same age group, so I don't have anything great like that, any super great anecdotal thing, but my friend worked at a card shop when he was like 12, which doesn't make sense to me in retrospect, but whatever.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's illegal.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, right? I don't know if he really worked. I don't know. It's all vague, okay? But we would go to weekend tournaments there and stuff, and I actually like did okay. I made money. I like actually made money So
All right, so
like
12-year-old card shop guy, which is legal. I'm pretty sure whatever age you were is probably also illegal to be gambling Yu-Gi-Oh
no, not
dollars.
not gambling. You like you like pay like $5 to get in, and then if you win, you get like
Okay, okay.
you get a small part of that as like a pot, right? So it's not like a gamble. It's more just like a prize.
Yeah, it's just a gamble on whether you win or not, so it's not a gamble at all.
Look, I don't know, man. Mentique is weird. That's what I've learned. All right, this conversation.
Okay, so what are you up to these days that is something that can even remotely rival the nerdiness that I was when I was
it down,
preaching?
so I assume that you know. I am stepping into the last bastion of nerddom. The last area I've never
The point of no
ventured into,
return.
and I'm doing a D&D campaign with some friends. Starting in like a week.
Oh yeah, you
or
haven't.
maybe a
Oh
week and
my
a half.
god! So you haven't not started?
No. First session's tentatively on the 21st.
Oh man, that's actually the date of the live show that I'm looking forward to. We'll talk about that
Yeah.
offline.
Yeah, I think I might be sad that I'm missing that. I found out today.
Okay. So this is. I feel very privileged to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, so here's where I'm at with it is I don't have a whole ton of shame about like wanting to do funny nerdy stuff. Video games are super fun and engaging and all that good stuff and can be social. I've never really done any tabletop stuff because it feels like I think there's a part of you that's like, oh yeah, but I'm not the guy who dresses up or that guy who does XYZ, but there's nothing wrong with any of those things, right? Like if they're funny, like and you watch I don't know, whatever movie where you laugh, and it's probably a subconscious part of you that's like, oh, but I'm better than that.
All right, like I'm better than LARPing.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. But so and I kind of associate tabletop stuff with that, but I don't think that's fair. The guys that I'm going to play with are some old friends and some of their friends, and one of them's like a police officer and is a totally like you would never guess that he plays video games as much as he does, much less that he's interested in doing a D&D campaign. Like if you talk to him, the number one thing he wants to talk to you about is craft beer and pool, like billiards. But if you also keep pushing, at some point he does have to go to bed or go inside. You can't just be out at a brewery all day. So he does go inside and then he just plays video games all night. So, you know what I mean? And so I guess now we're gonna do a D&D campaign.
No, that is so awesome. I think that it does have quite the stigma and partially rightfully so. Like it is quite the nerdy thing to do. But I do think there is a bit of charm and camaraderie that comes from that sort of thing. I've DM'd a pre-COVID campaign, and we were right on the cusp of like me branching off and doing my own thing. And like part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast is because I really enjoy creating things, and I realized pretty early on that I wanted to do something that was not scripted, and I wanted to write my own stuff. I've always been somebody who's kind of wanted to dabble in that sort of thing, and to have that outlet where you're creating something that is, objectively, like creating something is obviously going to be something that's consumed by other people. If you have any sort of audience or have anybody who's interested in consuming whatever it is you're making. But there is another level of fun that is like experiencing that real time. And I really, really enjoyed like coming up with these things and the extemporaneous storytelling when you have to, adjust when somebody does something completely off script of what you would have expected. And
I was going to say, I think there's something really unique about it. Actually, in a way, doing these podcasts is unique in that same way that it's so hard. You don't have that strict creative control. It's such a collaborative thing, and it's such a improvisational. Words are hard. Improvisational thing that even the best laid plans like are gonna go awry, and then you just have to improvise or like, okay, well, what would happen in XYZ? And I think that's super interesting all its own because there's not really another storytelling medium like that. So as far as a creative outlet, you're in a different kind of territory, right?
Yeah, and I honestly I think that is the most fun part. Like the parts that you script and come up with are certainly important to have because you have to keep the story flowing or you have to have
right.
the story moving forward. But the
100%.
the random things that you don't expect that you can turn into super fun, memorable things. I very much enjoyed when we were first doing our campaign, where our warlock oh my gosh, this is so nerdy. Where our warlock Tandem Nox in our party happened to have rolled like just the most ridiculously successful rolls, like roll after roll after roll, and just like smoked through all of my adversaries.
Like, this was supposed to take you much longer. This was supposed to be much more difficult.
Like,
okay.
Like, okay, well, that was supposed to take a half hour that took about half a minute, so that's just great. But no, like,
that's really good.
Like, I will always remember that. That was super fun, and I really enjoyed it. So, okay, so Nick, what? So you are going to maybe, or seems like going to be a part of a D&D campaign. So, what are you going to be?
Oh, I don't have. I feel bad because I know we have this topic, and I thought it would be interesting to talk about the more like broad strokes of that. But our so I've never played before, and I'm playing with a group of 5 other guys who all have played before and have played a bunch together. So, and I think this might be their first one they're doing online together. But more importantly, so I have a brief overview. My DM said he's going to drop some docs soon, which is to say, okay. I think I'm about to get like a lore dump on my face like this week sometime. And some other guys have ideas for what they want to play, and I've been talking about it, but I was very much like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing as much, so I'm going to try and do this. Our first night is going to be not playing, but like a setup and create the characters and whatever else would go into that day. And I am very much holding off. I have like ideas, but I really want to do, something that would fit, that wouldn't be taking any existing in a space that someone else already has. Like if somebody else is already like a mage, like seems silly to have 2 guys who are doing the same moves.
Yeah.
I'm very disconnected. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know that much about this campaign or whatever. Yeah.
Are you doing one of the traditional like starter campaigns, or with a more experienced group? Are you guys doing something custom, or
no? The guy who's our DM, I think, has played a bunch. I think he's been playing for a long time, basically. More what I should say. And he showed me a one shot. I was gonna do a one shot with him earlier this year, but it was gonna be too long, and I couldn't do it. And that itself, just the one shot, was this really, really interesting. Like, I mean, it read to me more like a fantasy novel like overview than it did a D&D thing. And he has not said that he's doing an original world or original campaign, but I have to imagine that that's the case. And
most people that have played, as long as it sounds like he has, are probably going to, even if it's not like completely original, like if it's a pre-made thing, they'll do their own take on it, and
definitely
that
makes sense.
My biggest advice for you, or my most important advice for you, is to and it sounds like you're already well on your way, but the least expectation is the best thing. Like just being willing to roll with whatever it is, and then like whatever your character lands as, to just freaking buy into it, because it's so much fun to have. Like, it wouldn't necessarily be what you would typically do in another game and like your own personality, but like to step out of that and totally buy in, like, it's so much fun. It's just a blast.
No, it makes perfect sense. And luckily I'm not 13. I'm not going to be playing for some power fantasy or something. You know what I mean? Or like I'm not going to take it personally if I'm not like the carry or the big badass or whatever. I don't really care. I just want to goof around and have and laugh and have fun with a bunch of cool people. So there you go.
I'm so proud of you, Nick. You've grown up so much.
I know. Show of maturity here in my D&D overview.
Yeah. See, speaking of mature topics, so we were talking before the show, going through the show notes of just one of the things that I had to put on there was screen time.
Yeah.
And
this is a tough one for everybody right now.
Oh, Nick. So we haven't even talked about this. At the beginning of the year, probably a month or 2 into the pandemic, I decided that I was going to be a better person and more control of what I spent time looking at. And
good man.
Yeah, well, good intentioned man. So I subscribed to The Economist, which is when I Googled the most like unbiased journalism play like just I wanted something that was not going to be
Totally.
the biased things out there
Right.
toward me. Like I just wanted something that was not that, because I've been so exhausted by that sort of media.
There's literally a term for it somewhere. It's escaping me right now, but there's a term for the feeling that we all have about like getting more deeply divided and getting more kind of fearful of things through our consumption of media and stuff. Like, continue,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, no, and it's overseas based, so I don't have to. I mean, I at least in my mind that at least separates it a little bit from the typical American centristic view of things. And my idea was like I was going to just read that. Like I actually got the magazine or newspaper sent to me weekly, and I was going to do that as my news. And like I did okay, and I did okay for a long time. Like it wasn't perfect, and I certainly still had some amount of social media influence, and like it's very easy to dive into sports stuff and then be on Reddit for whatever's happening in the NFL or NBA or whatever, and then immediately get sucked into all the other thing Reddit wants to have you click on. But I did a good job for a long time, until the election was nearing, and I spent a whole lot more time just allowing myself to doom scroll through
Yep.
just all the things. And like whoever came up with the term doom scroll, that is the best way to describe exactly.
It really is. It really is.
Like I literally felt nothing other than that. Like it is so much the feeling that I had. But
there should be like Jaws music in the background as you continue to read headlines. Just
yeah, freaking seriously. But anyhow, so I allowed myself to dip back into that because it's an important time in our country, and I want to know what's going on, and I can't be a perfect human. But as the election finished up, I wanted to return a little bit to not doing that so much, and that's just been a recent thing in the last day or two, and I didn't want to, but I looked at it. So I've switched over to the iPhone Life here for a little bit. Having opened that line of thinking again, where I want to spend a little bit less time being influenced by all the things that you get sucked into, I took a look at the screen time that I've spent and how that's changed over the last 3-4 weeks, and I was very shocked with what I had seen, and like I'll send this to you, Nick, afterwards if you want. But
yeah,
the last few weeks, or last 2 weeks specifically, I've averaged, and oh my gosh, this is so hard for me to even say. I've averaged over 5 hours a day on my phone, which it is not healthy. Even
no, I don't think it is
fraction of that. But like, oh my, like Nick, there's only 24 of them, and I'm asleep for, assumedly like 8, give or take an hour. And like,
oh my god,
that is so, and like, so like, let's assume I'm asleep for 8. Let's assume I'm at work for 8. That only leaves another 8, and and like I have a family and a wife, kids. Like there's no way that that's good, and there's so many of those things that are interesting and informative, but they're also rage-inducing and sometimes take me down rabbit holes that are unproductive. So I wanted to say all those things to say.
I want to tell you, I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but it's worth saying. I think that people being honest with themselves would realize that's very normal right now. I probably have dipped into that range, even without social media. I don't know, man. This is a very bizarre time, besides being home as much as we are, besides the fact that we've been home so much that I think everybody's just a little bit bored and a little bit more into our like sillier bad habits. And I say sillier as in like just I'm on my phone for 20 minutes while I wait for the food to cook or whatever, instead of doing anything with that time, because I don't know, man, what else am I doing? The house is clean, it's fine.
Yeah.
Mix that with the election and with the million other things that happen on a daily basis in this world in 2020. I think that's totally fair to be on your phone. Like, I don't think it's not healthy, like you said, and I don't think it is, but I also don't think people Well, I don't think that's an outlier by any means.
It's understandable, but it's not
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
And that's where, so like I wanted to say that to say like I want to use this as a little bit of accountability that needs to be half, if not less, and I just don't. You know, in the couple of other episodes that we've done, I've alluded to it, and obviously in other conversations I've had, like I don't think that it's a super great thing that we got going for us with how much time we spend being influenced by algorithms that are tailored to keeping our attention.
Agreed.
Because the things that keep our attention are the things
Panic.
that panic,
Fear.
and bad and anger and all the things that
Yep.
I don't want to spend my like the whole freaking reason why I wanted to make this podcast of like I just want to, which again feels a little bit counterintuitive to what I'm talking about now, but like I just want to spend time doing things that are talking about things that are good and interesting and fun and etc. Not the things that are making me. Blah.
I know this isn't like a fun conversation or a fun topic, but it is probably a productive and therefore
Right.
positive
Right.
topic, especially if you could use it as a form of self accountability, which is something I have 100% done not only like on this podcast already, but also with you a million times. So if I ever bring up something that is not always the most fun, I apologize. But I think it's positive. You're good. You're totally fine.
Yeah, it's not necessarily super fun, but I do think it is productive and
Yes.
a good thing, and I think that I'll I'll allow that to be fit into the pretense of what our podcast is about.
Yeah.
But that said, Nick, one thing, and like I've known you for a very long time, but one thing that has always interested me with how you handle online stuff, I've not known you to social media at all?
Yeah.
Question mark.
So I had a MySpace and a Facebook, and I won't like dwell on this because it's very connected to what you were just talking about, and that we should use all the time talking about stuff that's less fun, even if it is positive to talk about. But it's basically the same ideas, in some different applications. But I deleted my Facebook, I think in like 2011 or 2012. And for me that was, I finished high school in 2010, so it was probably about a year removed from high school, and I realized that most of what you think that you were getting out of Facebook, and I shouldn't just rail on Facebook. I never had an Instagram, I never had a Twitter. I do have a Reddit account, and that is my like actual weakness because it feels more anonymous to me, and it makes me feel like it's better. I try very hard to use it. Yeah.
I'm with you there. It's that's my most active weakness is
definitely
the Reddit account. But yeah, go ahead.
I try very hard. I've only ever posted on subreddits that are not about current events in any way. Like I posted on like the NBA subreddit, NBA discussion subreddit, mountain biking, a video game or two, and a book series. So you know what I mean? Like I've tried very hard to keep it a very surface level social media experience. And I don't go on other subreddits. I don't go looking for subreddits, but at the same time, I check in on basketball stuff way too often there. I check in on whatever else I'm in is my current ethos way too often. The main reason I haven't done social media, I deleted my Facebook and deleted anything else I had. I forget if I had anything else. I may have had an Instagram account for a very like for a minute. You know what I mean? For like just the shortest amount of time. I deleted all those in 2011 or 2012 because I felt like all of the reasons that we tell ourselves that we use social media to keep in touch with family or people that we don't see that often, or to see pictures of friends and family and what's important to them, use it for social gatherings, whatever. Some of that stuff was happening, sure, but it wasn't really happening to the extent that I didn't think it was really adding that much benefit or that much value to my life. And, if I want to see my cousin's wedding pictures, I can still ask them, like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not on Facebook. Could you send me a text? And, sometimes you do miss those. And sometimes that, like, you definitely miss out on friends casually getting together, friends casually having conversations. I've definitely been there when, like, coworkers say, oh, did you see that thing I posted? And they all laugh and you kind of feel a little left out.
So, like, Nick,
you're not,
like,
it's not a significant loss. And the downsides, I mean, we have to dive
Nick,
into it,
but
like, they're so obvious.
Nick, but like I like all what you're saying I subscribe to, but you're talking about doing this when you were flipping 18 years old, and I was very dumb when I was 18 years old. Like, what? Like, what? What specific? Like, is it just you? Are you just that much more aware of how bad this like back then? Like, what that was, or what was the tipping point there?
I'm not. I'm gonna sound like a the millennial that I am, but I was in one of my journalism courses that was about. I think it was literally titled "Mass Media Influence" or something like that. And it wasn't about social media explicitly. It was about mass media. So like also 24-hour news networks and whatever else. And it was really like I was already kind of disillusioned with it. I already felt like I was always checking my phone to see like who posted what as their status instead of texting my friends the way I always had, or just talking to my friends. It kind of just like that, and watch documentaries and just try to be more self aware of it. That isn't to say that I am, I'm not trying to say this like I was mature enough to just. For me, I don't know. I have small social circles anyways. I never was the kind of person who kept up with 30, 40, 50 people at a time. When I had 150 friends on Facebook, I felt like I was like, I wouldn't talk to, not wouldn't talk to. I in my day to day, the amount of these people that I would really interact with anyways is very little. And not that I didn't like them or didn't have any or had bad thoughts about them. It's just like, this is a person I had a class with 2 years ago, and I value that time. And if I saw them again, I would love to, do something, grab lunch or something. But do I really need to see every time they go to a bar and take a group shot with their friends? And do I need to see, you know what I mean? It just seems silly. So,
well, I feel a little bit embarrassed that I could use a good amount of life advice from 18-year-old Nick to 30-year-old Jeff.
If any, you could use that single piece of advice from 18-year-old Nick.
I'll take it where I can get it. So you kind of mentioned that like stemmed from a class, and just how that kind of made you like. Did you? Because I can think back to some of the teachers that I had, and there's a couple, two specifically, that I feel like really shaped who I am / how I think about things. Did you have good teachers growing up? Or like, I mean, obviously I feel like whatever teacher this was, or whatever the subject matter was, I think affected you in a way that I feel like many of us could be affected. But was there anything else like that?
I've only had a couple. I would say both of the two that stand out to me are the only two whose names I remember after a distant amount of time, and both of them were super awesome and super influential. I didn't have a oh captain my captain style relationship with them where I was like really really close to them, but I do know that both of them checked in on me, wanted better for me than just the class, and were very influential. And not just me, obviously, but like the whole class. My one of them being that journalism professor, I took 3 courses from him, all 3 of my journalism courses before I switched majors. And then my C++ professor not long ago. Interestingly enough, no high school teachers and no teachers from university. These were both professors from community colleges, which is just
really
probably coincidental, but it's interesting.
Yeah. Both of mine were no, that's not true. I started off with a lie there. No, one of mine was from high school, one of mine was from college. One was a social studies / history teacher through middle school / high school. She moved up with us, and
that's really cool.
Yeah, like it was a transition time for my school, and she transitioned with us. And the thing that she did that was different, well, and not that other teachers didn't do this, but she so much valued taking the time to prepare for school, like prepare for class, and like how important it was to, like how valuable it was to spend the time outside of class to show up prepared, and like, which all
that's
that
a
sounds
very valuable lesson.
It sounds so like intuitive, like of course every teacher should do that, but like she just did it in a way that was impactful to me. And so I did I did well in that course, but more than anything, I just realized how much, like, if I spend the time invested in something, I can do something that is that's a good job and that's worth spending the time to do.
Oh, sorry, am I interrupting?
No, go ahead.
One?
You're good.
Okay. So then you said that is a very very super valuable lesson that spending the time outside of it and preparing is very valuable. And I think a lot of kids probably don't realize that, right, until much later in life. So something you said reminded me of, actually, I should give credit where credit's due. When I was younger, I moved a lot. And in middle school, I ended up going to like 5 middle schools as an example of how much I was moving. And it kind of messes with your academic stuff because, you know, sometimes you're out of class for a month while your parents' home is getting figured out or whatever, right? Because they're changing jobs or rather moving for a job or whatever. So my sister and I ended up at a charter school, and I know charter schools are very controversial these days, but the reason we were there, I believe, is because they weren't doing just like the standardized curriculum, and we had both been kind of like just circumstantially got not screwed, but we're out of school for like 2 months or something like that, and you know that messes with your ability to know math topics and whatever, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the teachers there is a very small school in a small town, and of I think it was like 80 to 90 kids per grade, and so I think there were 4 or 5 teachers per grade as well. The 2 or 3 of the teachers in particular that I had several courses for were just like embodied that going the extra mile thing that you hear about from teachers. We had to have all content turned in, and for me at the time, like I had never struggled as a student, but I think that specific year I struggled to get a lot of stuff done because it was just like a new weird situation and whatever else. And, you know, we had to have all of the content done that we were there for. And these teachers stayed late with not just me, but like everybody who was missing stuff. And this was a charter school, so you had people from all kinds of weird scenarios and walks of life and whatever else reasons. So the lot of us were late after school for, I remember like the entire last month of classes, we were just always late and just always there till way too long. And the teachers there had totally went above and beyond. And the reason I say is that if you want something like that can influence a kid and positively affect a kid, we all understand that giving to others and giving your time to others is valuable, but seeing it in action, especially at a young age, is definitely a super positive influence for me. And it definitely like instilled in me that, you know, we should all be paying it forward in that way of like, if we all do more for others or are willing to spend that extra time for others, then others will see that positivity and want to do more for others as well. And it just doesn't necessarily come back to you. It's a better world for everybody, right?
My other teacher that I would put as the most influential person in a teacher role for myself was my Spanish teacher in college, and I actually had to take 3 Spanish classes in college, to which I'll say, to kind of discredit myself in this, I basically know no Spanish now.
So which is funny because when I met you, you were good.
Yeah, I certainly did used to know some amount of Spanish, and I can still, I don't know. I'm okay-ish, like listening and understanding. If I were to be asked to say anything, I would quickly figure out how I can exit that situation as quickly as possible. But no, I remember my first semester in college. So 2 things. One, actually, this is going to lead me to a funny high school story. So I took Spanish all through high school. I think 4 semesters in high school, and I had 1 B in high school, but it should have been 2. And so my first B was my very first semester in high school. I got a B in geography or something because I don't know. The teacher hated me. That's what my excuse was. No, like
that's what all of our excuses are. You're fine.
High school football and blah blah blah, and I have other priorities, and
we're adults here. We're all okay with
etc. etc.
I totally go that route too. I just like, let me explain to you why my 7th grade grades. Okay, but go ahead.
Right.
I'm sorry.
But again, things that are probably not great to say on a podcast. So I think sophomore year, maybe junior year, this story could be 20 minutes long, but I'm gonna give you the condensed version. So I finished my let's call it junior year of Spanish, and I had like an 83 or something like that, which for our school you had to have 92 or higher to be an A.
Okay.
Yep. And so end of the semester, I'm like, well, frick, this is my second second B. I don't want to have another B. I liked it when I just had the one B that I had the good excuse for because of blah 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 freshman year football or whatever. So I went in and talked to our teacher, who I'll leave nameless, and said, "Hey, like, I know my grade's not the best. Is there anything that I can work on to, like, is there any last minute extra credit things that I could do? I know it's kind of a long shot." And so she went through and she like, "Hey, you know that test that we took back at the beginning of the year that you got a C on or whatever, you kind of picked up on some of those concepts, so I'll go ahead and move that to an A." And she basically repeated that sort of conversation like 4 to 5 more times until the computer said I got an A, and then she said, "All right."
God.
So like, I felt so dirty that I had gotten an A. But I just
You're
literally
only revealing this story 15 years later, and now that you know the record's set
like
in stone.
I'm feeling more and more guilty by the minute. Which I have so many hilarious guilty Jeff stories when everybody thought I was a nice innocent kid.
Damn.
Yeah, so I got an A in all my Spanish classes despite having not deserved that. And then at Wichita State had a teacher who did the typical thing that I think you have in foreign language nowadays, which is the teacher, regardless of how experienced you are, is going to start that class not speaking English. And that was very, very intimidating to me. But she did such a fantastic job of taking those of us that were struggling with Spanish, like helping us after hours or even during the class, taking time aside and making sure that we were, even if we didn't 100% get what was happening or understanding what she was talking about, that we would be able to follow enough, well enough to be able to, progress through the course. And I just remember our first final, there was like a required, like, meet with the teacher separately, like practice for the final. And it was like we were supposed to show up and talk exclusively in Spanish. And she, which I very well may even get emotional talking about this, but like,
oh man,
she did such a good job throughout this entire class where we spoke literally no English at all, and of like asking us about our personal lives. And at that time, Katie and I had gotten engaged and we're going to be married the next year. So like, it was so this may have been a little bit more advanced. This might not have been the first semester that I had with her, but
sure.
Like, I just remember going into practice for that final with her, knowing that I had to exclusively speak in Spanish. And I said something dumb where I called I used the female version of whatever the word it was to describe myself.
Right.
So it was like, I not, yeah, I don't know. It was
Senorita.
Yeah, right. Not that obvious.
Oh, okay.
But like, she asked me about our engagement and our like what we were planning for our wedding, and then obviously helped me with some of my stuff for my final that was coming up. Then afterwards, for the first time after probably a couple semesters, again, I don't know exactly the time frame, but talked to me in English for the first time, in the very, very, like, we've talked in Spanish, which I am terrible at, but she kind of shared a little bit about herself and what her and her husband were going through with her husband immigrating to the U.S. and how hard that was and how excited she was for Katie and I.
That's too cool. That's a genuine connection, right? It's a genuine person-to-person connection, not just a teacher that's going through the motions, right?
Yeah, thank you for filling in the part where I got choked up. But like, to have gone through all that learning and knowing that, like, obviously learning Spanish is good, and like, I understand why it's a part of our curriculum. It wasn't a thing that I particularly was going to be ever good at. But she, to pull back the veil to show how much she actually cared about us, and she had spent so much time working on us with Spanish, but to know that, like, through all that, she still cared of us as people too, was a really, really cool thing. And that has been really meaningful to me for a long, long time. And anytime I've had any opportunity to invest in a person with their development, but also with them as a person, and to show how much I care about them as a person, that has always been a huge influence. Like, it meant so much to me, and I hope that I can pay that forward. And
incredibly well said and a really, really good story. And I think it's something that we probably take for granted is the fact that people need help to develop in certain areas, especially when we are very comfortable in an area or topic. It's so important to be able to reach out and help people get to whatever stage they need to be in, and also care about them as we're doing that. Super valuable lesson.
All right, so I can't. No more real talk. That's too
got
much.
It.
So,
oh man, we're gonna have Jeff cry on the third episode. I love it.
Yeah, yeah.
I love
Second
it.
episode, bidets. Third episode, Jeff cries about stuff. So we are passing an hour in recording, but I do want to tell one last funny story because I have it on my list. So before we call it a night, I wanted to tell my story because I have it in my show notes, and I'll probably forget it. And it's one of my favorite stories to tell. I think that'll be kind of a theme that I have a bunch of favorite stories to tell from when I was a kid and doing dumb things.
Hey, that's okay. That's my kind of story.
All right, so I'm gonna skip a big part of it, but I do want to tell. So me and a friend of mine. I'm sorry if I've told you the story before, but we were maybe. I want to say, let's call it first grade. So however old you are in first grade.
Sure.
So I have my little brother, and as a little brother should do, he was very successful at being annoying. And me and my first grade self, and my friend, one of my good friends when we were growing up, we decided that we wanted to not let my brother annoy us. And so one of the things I wanted to go into, which will maybe be a thing for another day, but we were really into Pogs, which is like the most 90s thing I think you could possibly be into as a kid.
Yes.
Which I wanted to ask if that was like, well, actually, let's pause real quick. Like, was I slightly older than you enough to the extent that you missed the Pogs era?
I kind of did, but they were around peripherally. Like, so my older sisters, not that it matters, but my older sister, I've got two older sisters. One is 4 years older than me, and one is 9 years older than me. So like, there's this weird overlap of a bunch of stuff that like was like late 80s, early 90s when I was really young. That's like in my purview, but I wasn't like I didn't have Pogs. I didn't collect Pogs, but I know what they are.
One of the most fun Pogs stories I have was there was like this Pogs NBA game. Like I wish that I could figure out actually what it was. I don't really remember the details, but basically you would have different NBA players and Pog stuff and scoring, and it was like Dirk's rookie year and J Kid and other stuff. Like it was, like it was such a good time of basketball, and I don't know. That was my first. Like I really got into NBA back then because of Pogs. But
because of Pogs.
Yeah, right. I got into this very athletic thing because of this very non-athletic thing.
I wish that we heard that. You know how like how athletes get asked like really inane questions in interviews. I'd love to hear like what drove you to be an NBA player. Well, when I was 6, I really loved Pogs. You should have seen Dirk on that guy, man. So cool,
right? I gotta imagine that the time frame for that had to have been quite the narrow window. So I threaded the needle there, but
that's fair. That's fair.
But anyhow, back to what I was talking about. I had an annoying brother friend. We played Pogs and stuff, but we didn't want my brother to bother us, and we had a bunk bed back in the day, and me and my brother did, and I had the brilliant idea that I was going to stop my brother from bothering us by putting tacks on the stairs up to the top bunk, and me and my friend hung out up there and did whatever NBA Pog stuff we were doing back then. But as any good younger brother would do, continued to annoy us to the extent that he had annoyed me to the point where I had been like, I was so frustrated that I stomped down the stairs to tell him how frustrated I was with him. And I made it about 3 stairs down my tack-ridden stairs that I fell over with like probably 20 tacks in my foot, if I remember right. Like, I thought I was so smart preventing my brother from coming up to bother us, and then stomped down. And it wasn't like I stepped on them; I stomped down on them out of anger. Yeah. So.
Oh my god.
That was the story I wanted to tell because I feel
That's
like
so good.
that needs to be immortalized in
That's a
podcast
very 90s
history.
story too. I love it. I'm a
Yeah.
big fan. So while we're talking 90s basketball, did you ever watch Three Ninjas as a kid?
It
It's
feels
a very
familiar,
90s
but
movie.
I don't know exactly what that is.
I'm gonna give you a brief overview. I won't dive too deep.
Okay.
This isn't gonna become a Three Ninjas podcast, but it's a it's a 90s movie that encapsulates the 90s. It very well could be like late 80s, but it's about three kids who are all brothers, whose grandpa is, of course, a martial arts teacher, and they go to stay with grandpa one summer, and then it turns out he's not just a martial arts teacher, he's a ninja teacher. And he teaches them the way of the ninja. And then the kids have to rescue him when grandpa gets kidnapped by, I think, other ninjas, like evil bad ninjas who like want him to work with them. I can't remember the exact details, but the reason I say is that there is a basketball scene in this movie where the two older brothers play basketball on their playground, play 2-on-2 against some other kids to defend some girl's honor, and there has never been a more 90s sequence of a film in my entire life. It's perfectly encapsulating watching like a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old play 2-on-2 basketball for like 30 seconds in montage form. Just everything you could ever want. I'm going to send you the clip and we'll watch it some other time, but
yeah,
I love the 90s.
I'll watch it off air, but I feel like I don't even need to watch it like that. Like it just sounds like the most 90s thing ever.
Yeah, and the best part is they're using their ninja skills, of course. Like you have to.
I mean, obviously, yes.
Like, it's important for these. Oh my god, so good.
Oh good. Man, I feel like that's a good way to cap this off.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, it's been good. This has been the year we started a podcast. Thank you, everybody, or all four of you that have listened. I hope this is entertaining. And yeah, Nick, thanks for spending the time talking about 90s podcasts and pogs and other things.
The most important topic.
Did I say 90s podcasts?
You did say 90s podcasts. I wasn't going to call you out on it. I will say that I probably would have listened to 90s podcasts even as like a 7-year-old or whatever, because I would have thought I was cool for doing so. So, you know.
Yeah, and had we been doing that, we probably would be a little more, I don't know. I feel like we've been pioneering a thing about 20 years before it caught on.
Fair, yeah. See, this way we would have made it big. You should have thought.
Right, we would have been big. Yep. Anyways, Nick, thank you for hanging out, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, man. Later.